I want to talk to you about the staging of payments for our web design projects. And yeah, I know I've covered this off many times, but I've currently engaged with an architect to come and do some designs for me because I'm thinking about some refurbishment, renovation stuff. And their pricing payment plan and how they kind of stage things caught my eye. In fact, when I spoke to some other people before I employed them, they had a very similar structure, and it suddenly got me thinking about how we need to do things possibly a little bit differently. And I don't just mean us as an agency, but maybe yourselves as well. Now, it's very common with web design projects that you're going to charge 50% upfront and then 50% at the end. Some of you will charge 100% upfront. Others might do 40%. Now, the percentages can differ between many business models. But one of the most common things, unless you go for 100% up front, is that you don't get the final payment until the project is completed. So in our case, 50% up front and then 50% at the end. Now, it's what the architect was doing that really caught my eye. They've broken it down into 30%, 50%, and 20%. Now, you might look at that and go, well, it still comes to 100%, and obviously you're still going to pay 20% at the end. Well, no, it's actually very different. I'm going to tell you what they did and at what point I pay them, and how I think we can relate that or kind of mirror that for what we do with web design, freelancers, anyone like that. Let me break it down. 30%, 50%, and 20%. Initially, we had a conversation over email. They then popped down really quickly and we had a quick 5-10 minute conversation, right? Which you could probably do via a video call as well, but they needed to be here just to see the rough layout of the house. And I needed to make sure that I like them, they like me, and we connect and click, right? So that was free of charge, right? They then say that I have to pay 30%. And by the way, you know, there was time for me to have a think about. There was no pressure sell or anything like that. Please don't think it was like that. But before they take official proper measurements, you know, every nook and cranny, drawings of the house and all of that, I have to pay 30%. So that's 30%. And then they come and do the measurements. Then they go away and they start to do the draft drawings and all of that. Now, I'm allowed to go back and ask for changes. If this is a draft, right? This isn't the actual technical drawings. This is the draft of potential layouts. I mean, I get to pick which one I like. Once we've decided on the rough draft, I then pay another 50%. So 30% is for them to measure up. 50% is after I've agreed the draft. Then they will do the final technical drawing. But I have to pay 20% before they do that technical drawing. So that means I'm paying them before I get that final plan, the one where I can now go to builders or building control or speak to a quantity surveyor or start working out the exact budget costs to do what I really want to do. You're paying way before you get the final product. Now let me relate that to web design. 50% up front, 50% at the end. So you could do a heap a load of work, but you're always waiting for the client to go, yeah, I'm happy, sign off, boom. Here's your final 50%. And we know there can be issues along the way. You know, it's always an up and down journey. How many of us have conversations with clients? And by the way, we do charge for discovery calls. But how many of you have had like countless emails, phone calls? You might even have met the client and you've now started to map out kind of what plugins you're going to use, how you're going to build it. You start collating some of the content for them. And what have you actually received back as payment? You got a client. They pay you 50%, you start to do a bit of homework, and then you realize at some stage you're not clicking, right? They're asking too much of you. You gave them a proposal, but now they want to heap a load of more stuff, but they don't want to renegotiate the package. They're holding you to that price. I don't care if it's triple the amount of work. I'm not going to pay a penny more. And then when the relationship starts to sink, you end up having to give them a refund. Now, some people will say we will never issue a refund because obviously our time was taken up. Yeah, that can get quite messy when you get into those kind of arguments. But imagine it goes sour. They've paid 50% and you're going to give them a little bit of a cut back. Maybe we need to rethink what we do. Think of the architect, right? We had a conversation and then before he literally measured, I mean it, he didn't pull out his tape measure or his laser, whatever guide. a thing. You didn't do any of that. Not until I paid 30%. And I respect that. Okay. I respect why they did that. And it makes total sense. Why can't we? Well, I know we charge a discovery call. So when I say we, I'm really talking about you. Why can't you charge 10% of what you think the cost will be as part of your discovery, your planning? So your client's got to pay you 10%. So even if the relationship goes downhill, that 10% is non-refundable because this was now part of you having further conversations with them to fully understand what they need and what they want and how you're potentially going to solve it. So even if they take all of our intel and intelligence and go elsewhere, you've still received 10%. Now let's go a stage further. So now let's say you've decided on how you're going to approach it, but now you need the content from them. So it might be images, it might be wording, it might be potentially what the keywords are, it might be like logos or stuff, that you're going to need for the website, a list of the products. Well, before they start to send you that, you now get another 10% off them. So now we're at 20%. 10% for the discovery and the planning and blah, 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 and then 10% for the collation. So that if now you get to that point and you've received everything, and then the relationship goes downhill, well, no, they can't get a refund of you because you spent time doing the discovery call and all the collation. That's 20% secured. Now, when it comes to you actually building the website, you take 50%. And that will cover off you building the WordPress, the installation, the setup, adding in the plugins, setting up the plugin settings. If it's got WooCommerce, you might need to do, set that up, do your payment gateways, building the homepage. Right? You don't build any more than the homepage at this point. You build the homepage. They may want a few changes. There might be a little bit of back and forth. Make sure you control how many changes you allow. And then you get sign off. But you don't do that until you've been paid 50%, right? So you've been paid 10 and 10 and 50. So now we've already been paid 70%. And all we've done is the installation, the settings of the plugins, make sure things connect. There's nothing worse than building a website and then you add plugins in afterwards and you realize that doesn't work or it causes an issue or a bit of conflict. Get all of that done as part of your setup, your optimization, all of that. And then you've built the homepage. Now we're at 70%. And when they are agreed and they're happy so far, you then take the final 30% before you build the remainder of the website. Now, this is kind of entering kind of like a bit of a psychological change in your mindset. Remember what I said. Some people take 100% upfront payment before they've done anything. So I'm now telling you, well, we'll take it in stages, but before you build the remainder of that website, they now pay you the remainder 30%. So if during the process or whatever, right, they're taking longer to pay you, well, it's not really an issue now because you've been paid. And when I was speaking to the architect and they shared the payment plan, it caught my eye. And I was speaking to 3 other people and they had very similar plans. There was just one of them where they let you pay 25% at the end. But nearly all of them, well, basically 3 out of the 4, you're paying in stages all up front before they commit to doing the work. And it's really made me go, we're a bit too lenient, aren't we? We're a bit too trusting. How many times have you built a website and the client does a runner, gets a copy, oh, I'll remove your website, and they kind of go, haha, we already got the backup. So you can do what you want, but we've got the backup and we'll go buy our own license and away we go. It happens. It's happened to us. Believe me, it has happened. So rather than 50 at the start and 50 at the end, how about 10% for your discovery, 10% for when you're now collating things, 50% for when you're building the homepage, the first set of installations for WordPress, the plugins and all of that, making sure things work, and 30% before you do the remainder. And if you have built up trust, I mean, come on, look, I just paid out 30% to the architect, right? They're now at the moment doing their drafts and everything, but they built up a level of trust with me. I met them, I spoke to them, I did my research about them, I looked at what they've done in the past. They built up trust, so I'm happy to pay 30% before they measured a single thing. You build up the trust with your client, and they know who you are and what they're potentially going to get. They should be willing to pay that. And you're not asking for the world here, right? 10%. And if things go downhill, well, okay, they will have lost a bit of money, but in some way they've kind of paid you for your time. I would love to know your comments on this, and I hope you've stuck through and watched all of this. Fill out the comments with what your pricing structure plans are. And would you consider a model, or maybe you already are, where you get paid prior to you doing the work? So you're not waiting for the final payment because you've already got it. Hey, I'm Imran Web Squadron. I hope you like, subscribe, share, and follow. I'll see you soon.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life.